you're going to introduce me right now?
Hello, and welcome to the meeting of the Rotary E-Club of District 7710 for Tuesday, October 8th, 2019. Thank you for joining us. Our guest speaker this evening is Alexandra Valladares, who will be discussing Hispanic Parent Advocacy in Durham Public Schools. Program Chair Kevin Primus will be introducing Alexandra this evening. Kevin?
Hi, this is Kevin Primus, and we are here actually at the Houghton Resource Center, Durham Public Schools. If you have your, if you're logged in with your computer, you might see behind me that a parent advocacy group is just finishing. We just had a forum here, and Alexandra Valladares was the organizer of this event, among many others that she works with. And Alexandra was born in Honduras and came to the United States as a child and grew up in Miami, Florida, and in Durham, North Carolina. And she graduated from Hillside High, the International Baccalaureate program, and went on to get 2 degrees from North Carolina Central University in chemistry, biology, and earth science. And she's worked in clinical research at Duke University. She works currently with the University of Vermont's Leadership for Sustainability program, and also has done lots of work with advocacy, both political, parent advocacy, even patient advocacy. She works with patients with music and plays music with them. So I'm going to turn this over to Alexandra and thank her tonight for being with us to talk with us about her work. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here today. As Kevin just said, we just ended a forum, and it was widely attended. When I say widely, I mean there were parents from different schools, different Durham Public Schools. There were administrators. We had the superintendent. He's the main guest that we have invited to come and address some of the questions and also have a conversation with our parents. But it's a wonderful thing to have access to have these kind of forums that allow people to have conversations and allow for that collaboration that is very beneficial, especially with something like education and schools. So as a parent advocate, as also an alumna of DPS, you know, it's very near and dear to my heart to know that we are continuing these conversations and we are finding ways to make the leadership and the parents to bridge the gap between them, and for parents to be able to communicate ways to improve the education of their students, of kids, in ways that only they know, based on experience, and also for administrators to talk about things that they are planning, that they're already doing, things that are already underway that may not be clear. And so in a way, it's kind of like informing the process, informing some of the work that's happening. So just wanted to thank Kevin for that wonderful introduction. You know, he definitely did touch upon many different things that are of interest to me and parts of my story. As an immigrant of Honduras, Central America, my primary language is Spanish. And so it was wonderful tonight to kind of hear some of the families talk about bilingual immersion programs and how the district has started. We have had one school, and it's Southwest, that has had the bilingual immersion program, but there's this year they rolled out with adding Lakewood Elementary and Bethesda Elementary, so adding a classroom in each of these schools. And one of the questions that parents had is like, you know, is this something that will be expanded? And something that the superintendent said was, you know, it's based on community input. You know, if this is a program that is of benefit and is of interest to families, and he hears that feedback, then they will consider, you know, expanding it. At this point, they're just starting out. It's a pilot. They're seeing how it goes, and it just kind of it definitely highlights the importance of feedback and how are they going to get that feedback. And that's where I come in the sense that, you know, this evening, the superintendent and his admins were hearing that the parents are really interested in these kind of programs, as well as interested in bilingual educators. So these are some of the efforts that I'm involved in. What I do like is conversation. So I wonder if, you know, up to this point, as I mentioned, that I've done a forum. You've heard a little bit of my story as being a graduate of Hillside High and NCCU. I wonder if there's like just a question that anybody has at this point, a question that I can address at this point.
Yeah, this is Gene Perry. Just a question. I'm a special ed teacher at a charter school in Durham, and I know there are issues with language and culture as well. What's a major concern? What's a concern? I know parents not being able to communicate with teachers, but do we have is there another goal here that, and maybe an explanation of what an immersion class would be? Is it a replacement for ELL, for instance?
Okay. So we know that there are some federally mandated programs. So it's, that they talked about the fact that federally, there's some funds for ELL supports, and ESL is definitely a program that works. But the thing is that our families are not all our families are ELL or requiring ESL services. Some of them, it's about the cultural piece. So I love how you mentioned, like the two components. There's a language acquisition and but there's also like a cultural component. And when we're talking about bilingual educators, we're talking about the identity, or the sense of belonging. So many of the other social benefits and also the those cultural components that are beneficial to have when you have a person that has not just the language but also the culture to back it up. So ELL is we have that sector. We have funds that are federally allocated. We do have that kind of programming that is for our students. But we also, what we're trying to talk to the district about is setting a culture of how parents are treated. So for example, having ELL program or having these kind of programs is not going to fix the communication piece. And you mentioned communication as well. So if a parent wants to talk to a teacher, it could be a language barrier, but what if it was more about some of the equity concerns about parents who represent certain groups not being able to get their concerns addressed, and that touches on something else. That touches on more of a culture that is allowing families from diverse backgrounds to have access and to get their concerns addressed in a timely fashion, which is another thing from tonight that was very interesting. The superintendent talked about a process, and they provided a ladder. And essentially what that ladder is that families know that they can go to their building school administrator to talk about concerns that they have. So they can go to the principal. But some families that were here tonight said, yeah, we've done that. We've gone to the principal. We've addressed many concerns, but it's not going anywhere. What do we do next? So then it's the ladder and how to move up and how to advocate and go to the school relations department. And so the concern there is that the school relations department doesn't have bilingual staff. So there we have a need, and that's not ESL now. That's actually the staff at the district level that doesn't have the adequate staffing, people with the abilities to communicate with the parents. So a mom talked about being outside of the office, of the school relations office, for over an hour and not being able to get her questions answered and not leaving without anything resolved because they didn't even see her. And so my case is that, yes, it's great to have ESL programs, but those are only meeting certain needs. The needs are broad, and there's a need to kind of inform the processes along all the different lines. So how to have bilingual staff, how to make sure that all parents feel like that they have an opportunity, and that they're being valued as parents, and can help the district improve services for all families.
All right, that sounds like a very monumental task. I was just let me put my mic back on. I was just taken by, I saw a parent at the beginning of school, and she waited downstairs for about 15-20 minutes trying to get a translator to communicate at the beginning of school. And I was trying to empathize how frustrating that must be with all the kids going here and there, and she's trying to get a question answered and no one really having the time to speak with her, and we only have one other Hispanic person in there, and she's a TA, and obviously she's up somewhere doing work, so we had to pull her down. So multiplying that throughout the system, it must be a monumental task.
It is a monumental task, and but you know, part of it is that it requires solutions that are not just based in one department. It's like that process by which across the board everybody realizes the benefit of having staff that is bilingual and also culturally competent. I think that that's definitely the benefit to families, because you know, when we start thinking about families that are not getting their needs addressed and having to wait 15, 20, there are families tonight that we're talking about having to wait for an hour or more and not being able to get through. And that's definitely a disservice to students that are our future. So when we start thinking about the fact that we are not adequately staffing, then we start going into HR, and how is HR recruiting talent? And then, so one of the presentations tonight, which was very interesting, was talking about our own homegrown programs. You know, when we talk about homegrown, we want to be able to build from our own base, right? From our own city, from our own schools, and be able to recruit talent. But then that also brings the question of salaries. And tonight there were some questions about what is the minimum salary. So it's like the superintendent was talking about $35,000 is a starting salary, but there are supplements. And in North Carolina, you know, they can get like a, you know, $5,000. So $39,000 will be like a starting salary with a supplement. And the fact that, you know, for somebody who has to be spread thin pretty much, like if they're in a role, you know, if they're a teacher, but then they have to run to help other classrooms because they're the only person in that building that speaks Spanish, you know, that's definitely one of the ways that people experience burnout, because they're having to fill the gaps of because the demand is great. So in that sense, what we try to do is just to talk about the importance of bilingual programs, because that ensures that across the board, kids are growing up being bilingual. You know, we will not be able to have folks representing the countries that are, you know, the different languages. Like when we talk about Latin America, you know, one of the questions is like, there are teachers from Spain, but they're not necessarily representing the populations that are here, like from Mexico, from Central America. And so as we think about like these programs that are about bilingualism, what we do is that we make it accessible to everybody, so that, you know, the front desk person doesn't necessarily have to be Latina, although, you know, there are some Latinos that are going to be at the front desk, but everybody's kind of like aware. Everybody's has gotten the language acquisition and can at least communicate. And then there's also the training about how we are treating all our families and making sure that we are being equitable across the board. So I think we need to start looking at grow our own programs and start also addressing the fact that they mentioned that in North Carolina, there isn't one single Hispanic serving institution. So if you go to other states, there are states that have, you know, there's one designated, like in Texas, you know, they'll have like a new university that is known to be an HSI or Hispanic serving institution. But in North Carolina, we have none. None of our universities have, I guess, figured out a program or figured out a way to get that designation as a Hispanic serving institution. So maybe that's something we can start pressuring our university presidents, or talk to the different universities and seeing, like, you know, at least I went to NCCU, so, you know, it's like talking to NCCU as an HBCU, what departments would already start like working and recruiting talent and making sure that they are a source of professionals that that can meet the gaps and meet the demand of bilingual educators in the system.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your questions and comments. So yeah, I wonder if anybody else has any other questions. I think that this is definitely a big topic, because as we're talking about pipeline programs, we're talking about growing our own and how we are edifying our students and supplying them with the resources, the tools, and the training as well, so that they know that that there are jobs for them, and also making those jobs, like incentivizing those jobs, which has to do with teacher salaries. So everything is so connected. Everything's connected, and I think that if we start taking approaches towards bilingual education, we start taking approaches towards having mental health. Like that's another big piece. You know, families have asked, you know, when are we going to get bilingual counselors? and who's going into the mental health field. And we don't have that many folks that are serving in that field. I think I saw you, Eugene. Did you have a question?
Well, it keeps expanding. It expands because, you know, on one side you have the kids and teaching and integrating the kids into the, you know, the system, but also it's the parents making sure that they feel comfortable, and I'm sure dealing with them on a cultural level, as well as, you know, the English learners themselves. The problem becomes big. I mean, is there a plan? Does anyone have a plan, or in your mind, do you think they're looking for something to morph, you know, maybe naturally, maybe not naturally, that would make things a lot easier? Because we see the population, the segment of population increasing. We see, you know, a potential storm coming. How are we adapting to deal with it, to accommodate it, to, you know, to make it work?
That's a good question. I mean, I do know that we have monumental issues. You know, we have climate change, and how do we start doing that? I think part of that is policy. Part of that is also, you know, raising awareness of, you know, what we're up against. I think with the fact that our district in Durham Public Schools is 1/3 Latino, and it's going to keep growing. It's just understanding, like, how are we already meeting the needs, and what are some ways that we can start looking at, like, knowing, like, that the changes are happening, knowing that that the schools are in need of supports of staff, you know, of staffing needs and all that. So I think at many different levels, I think that it's kind of like those, with any monumental question, we start looking at what can we do as individuals. So, you know, I talk about the fact that a lot of the issues that we are facing right now have to do with certain perceptions, misconceptions, stereotypes. So we, you know, being able to own those and to look at the ways that we sometimes may not want to, or maybe are not partnering with as many potential allies, you know, in this endeavor. So I'm thinking about, like, the role of parents. As a parent, you know, I have reached out to teachers. I have reached out to educators, and I'm like, you know, please, like, I'm willing to help. How can I help? And, you know, there are a lot of parents that are stepping in and they're saying, you know, I'm willing to support, to translate, you know, if needed. I have told teachers that, you know, don't be shy, like, do what you can. So don't be afraid to use Google Translate. You know, Google Translate, I'll say it's a small thing, but parents will appreciate it. You know, don't like give up so easily on our families and say, you know, this is such a big task. It's such a big problem. You know, I have, like, you know, 20 kids or 15 kids that speak Spanish, and I can't communicate with their parents, so I'm not going to even try. You know, so, no, I won't, like, try. Use Google Translate. You know, call the mom and try. Struggle a little bit, but then you'll find that, you know, the mom will appreciate that. And I have heard beautiful stories of parents who come in and they're also, like, you know, motivated and incentivized to want to communicate, you know, to start using you know, tools to be able to communicate and come into the classroom. Sometimes hand signs, sometimes it's like, you know, Google Translate back and forth, you know, but it's enriching to kind of see that there's a disposition and a willingness to communicate. And I think that that's the biggest hurdle right now. I think it's more like dismissing some of the notions and kind of like not having that perspective that it's too hard to even try. So why even try? It's almost like, let's do what we can. And then also to pressure the leadership. So for example, in Durham Public Schools, the superintendent has a strategic plan for the next 5 years. And when we did that plan, I was part of that planning group. He initially said he wanted to increase the percentage of teachers from 2 to 10%. And so it didn't sit well with me that it was only teachers. And I said, you know, we need more than teachers. We need front desk staff. We need bus drivers. We need all across the board. And we need to have bilingual. So then they changed the wording from teachers to educators, which by the definition that was given to me by the deputy superintendent, who works under Dr. Mubenga, the superintendent, she said educators is everybody who's involved in the school building, you know, and that's their definition. So down to the counselor, you know, down to, like, the whoever's in that building, it falls within educator. and anybody who's in the business or in education of kids falls within that. So they changed the word they went from teachers to educators, and now the goal is 10%, but 10% is not going to meet the needs. So then that's when we're talking about the fact that there could be incentive programs where teachers can learn Spanish, but also like programs that are not just about the language acquisition, but also the cultural parts of it, like, you know, to immerse themselves in the community, to not be shy to come out. And so that's one of the, that's another thing that we can also incentivize, like, you know, how do we learn about the culture and understand a little bit more about, you know, the families and some of their values and their customs, and for it not to just be tacos, you know, like Cinco de Mayo and tacos on Cinco de Mayo, like that's not,
don't knock Cinco de Mayo.
You start somewhere, you start somewhere, but let's really get into it, you know.
I get it, and at some point, well, probably at a lot of points by this time, you have the idea of the scarcity of resources and the competition, and the political folks have to make decisions. Where do you see the situation currently, and because, you know, teachers are looking for pay at this point, and we've got you know, a given source of income coming into the state. Where does this fit?
I think that that's the thing. I go back to the fact that anytime we've gone and we've advocated for funds and we say it's for ELL students, we get shut down because they're like, well, I'm not sure that everybody wants to help the ELL students directly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, but when we start looking at it as this is our community, these are our kids, we start taking an approach that is a little more broader, right? And how we all fit into this ecosystem of, like, you know, families that are here that, you know, are part of the fabric, are part of our community. And so we start advocating. So for example, I think that's where advocating for funds for bilingual programs. You know, we're not saying this is supports for ELL students only. We're saying actually this is something that's going to benefit the kids, because there are a lot of instances where misconceptions have led to problems. I can tell you an example. At a school, a child told his parents that he was being bullied, and he felt really bad. And the parents came in and they were trying to look into the bullying and talk to the principal. And when the child was explaining what had transpired, he essentially said the kids were speaking in Spanish. He couldn't understand what they were saying. And so he assumed they were talking about him because he couldn't understand what they were saying. And so they brought the kids in and they asked the kids, and the kids were oblivious to it. They're like, no, that's not even anything that we were even saying. And, you know, that they investigated it further, and there was no other indication that any bullying had taken place. And it was a matter of not understanding. And so, you know, when you start finding ways to you know, push for programs that are going to benefit all kids. It's not just going to benefit Latino kids to be in bilingual education. It's going to benefit, you know, all the kids, everybody. You're not going to be monolingual anymore. This is a global economy, and you know, I do look to the fact that there are folks that are picking up languages, you know, and even at this point, like, I would like to learn. I speak Spanish, I speak French, and I'd love to pick up something else, because I'm realizing, like, I am at a disadvantage when it comes to, like, some of the dominant world languages. I mean, we know what those trends are, you know, we know what those languages are. And so it's a way of kind of like pushing for things that are gonna benefit everybody. I think that's one of the things in terms of funding that I do find that we have to start looking a little more at the interconnectedness of some of these efforts, and that it's not just going to one particular group. And we also address zero-sum notions. You know, that if we do this, it's only going to benefit one group. We have to start, like, looking at it as what are the benefits to other students as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the way to push for funds. Thank you. Really appreciate your comments and questions.
Alexandra, thank you so much. There's just so much here, and it sounded so lively in the background. So I'm really hoping that starts, you know, the meetings and are just so important to get all parties together to you know, talk about the issues. And by the way, I use Google Translator all the time.
Oh,
And that is an
gets
awesome.
better. it gets better and better every time people use it. You know,
It does, and because it's like, what does that mean? So we're always going back and forth with it. So, but it's a problem that just is out there in many communities, not just Durham, but it's so meaningful that the parents have a forum and talk with administrators.
I think that that's one of the things I'll give props to this administration, because we've never had a superintendent who has made a commitment to the community. This is parent led. This is as grassroots as it gets. We don't have funds from institutions. We don't have sponsorships. Although there is once we set it up, the district actually started showing up, and then I was coming out of pocket for food. And then one of the DPS employees who worked for a newly created department called Multilingual Resource Center, he was building connections, and it's the networks, right? So when there's a will, there's a way, but then also there's people who know about, what the intention is, and then they decide to support it. So the current coordinator of the Multilingual Resource Center, he told me that the DPS Foundation could be a source of funds. They are a private, they are a nonprofit that is getting private and public funds, and they're not a part of the district. They're there to support the district. So this is creative funding, right? Funding that comes in. They can get all kinds of money. They get money from the chamber of commerce. They get money from folks who want to donate. And so they have money, and that I could have talked to them and reach out to them. And he gave me the name to reach out to one of the board members and ask her, would she be willing to sponsor food? Would the DPS Foundation be able to sponsor food? So the food that was sponsored tonight, I didn't have to come out of pocket anymore, because this was something that they said, okay, we will pay for food. And I just, they're not giving me any, there's no cash that's being exchanged. It's just, they just call the business. And then here's the benefit. I'm able to pick the businesses that are like local businesses, so I can support local businesses in the area, and they were able to pay for that. So it's definitely a benefit when we start looking at these efforts that are about like giving parents access and being able to meet people where they are at. I think the biggest piece, if there's any piece from all of this, is that everybody wants to be treated in a dignified manner. Everybody wants to be seen as an equal, and to know that we have always been fighting for that, for equity. I think at the heart of everything is just equity. So for our parents, it's like, do we matter? Can you give time? And the superintendent is like, yes, I will commit to meeting with you all every 3 months, because I'm already doing that with a couple of institutions. So the Durham Committee in the Affairs of Black People, and also Village of Wisdom, and We Are, and a couple of other organizations that have been working tirelessly with Black families, and knowing that there is a need. There is definitely a need to start looking at supports and data. So these meetings, the superintendent had been meeting with them quarterly. But in terms of the Latinx parents, there hasn't been any effort from any institution. So then that's kind of like when I was like, as a parent, I would love to do that. And I can just call up my network. I can call up the parents that I know and just ask them if they're willing, and they were definitely willing. And so, it's those efforts, those organic efforts that come about when people want something to happen. And then you have people that see the vision and they see it. They see the benefit of this, and then they start supporting it. So I am definitely super glad to see their engagement, and also glad because as we're doing this, then we can also work alongside, students of like in the case of our Black students, work with also like our Black students, our Latino families, our Black families, and other families in the district, and be able to find ways to address some of the problems that are affecting all of us. There are some issues that are, when it comes to reading proficiency, it's something that we need to look across the board for minority kids. 80% of the district is minority. So we need to start looking at some of these solutions together. The way we can do that is to make sure that everybody has what they need to advocate and to communicate as best possible what the needs are, and then we can come up with creative solutions for it.
That's wonderful. It's just great.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question this evening?
Yeah, I do, Alexandra. I guess I have a question in reference to has it been identified where the greatest opportunity for a process to start. Let me kind of give you an example from an education perspective. You get a student that speaks zero English, and you immerse them into a classroom that's all English. Has a group or yourself or someone thought about a way to prepare a plan that works best, that might serve as a roadmap? That might be a way of getting processes started. It's just that it could be that no one really knows how to do it. So have you given thought to that? And that could simply be it. And we know that maybe in most cases that might not be it, but often what we're looking for is a solution.
Yeah, actually, I think that one of those things is there's newcomer centers that are opening up. So the district definitely has a need to start looking at these populations, like these kids that are coming in that don't speak a word of English. And I think that to answer your question, newcomer centers are supposed to have a plan in place for the child to spend some time in the group, but then also to be able to immerse themselves once, with students. So it's not like they're just being put in classrooms immediately. They're supposed to start and getting some designated time to acclimate, and then that's how it's supposed to work. I'm not saying that it's always the way that it's done, but when the notion behind having newcomer centers is to have a process in place that is going to help students who are monolingual, who are just coming in, to be able to integrate themselves into classrooms and not be neglected, not being just thrown into a classroom and not learning. It's like there's supposed to be some learning outcomes and learning goals that they're supposed to have. And so, but who's checking on that? See, the question is, with all these processes and departments and programs that the district has, like who's really following up and making sure that things are being done the way that they're intended, so that students, when they're coming in and they're going through the newcomer center, that they are receiving the time that they're supposed to be receiving, and then after that they are actually being integrated into the classroom and that they're getting the supports they need. They're about to close the building. You guys are hearing the
Okay.
I am at a school. This is a school now. You heard the bell.
Well, Alexandra, on that note, since you're getting having to exit the building, I would love to, if you can, I don't know if you can see the screen or not.
Yes, I can see you.
Wonderful. Oh, can you see the screen that says thank you?
Let's see. No, I can't. I can't see
I
it.
think it just, I think, I don't know what's going on with that.
Oh,
Give me 1 second. Hopefully they won't throw you out in the meantime. And I don't know why. That's the YouTube video we watched about ending polio. Let's see.
There you go.
All right. Thank you. Alexandra, we'd love to say thank you for joining us this evening. And we'd like to present you with this virtual certificate of appreciation for imparting valuable insights and inspiration as our guest speaker this evening. So thank you so much. And Lonnie has graciously agreed to do the 4-way test tonight. Lonnie?
Okay, the 4-way test are the things we think, say, or do. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And that is Rotary for this evening, October 8th, 2019. And if anyone would